There's a song called Bella's Lullaby. And when I first heard the song, my 11-year-old self, who only played saxophone at the time, so I knew a little bit about music, but nothing about the piano, I became obsessed. Like I felt so moved by this song. Just the instrumental, just that piano, that I wanted to conquer. Like I wanted to hone that power. Like I wanted to be able to make other people feel the way that that song made me feel. And so the only way that I knew how to do that was to play the music, right? To play that song. And so I bust out like this old dingy keyboard we had in the closet. I blow off the dust and I'm finding YouTube videos on how to play it. And I mean, these instructors, they're teaching the song, but they're teaching it like play E and play A. And for me, I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But with the tools and the resources that I had at the time and stay with me, I was like, okay, I can memorize the keys. Like I can do that. I can memorize the keys. So I memorized the finger placements. So I'm like, done, okay, done. And I could only get like this much. Like once she started like going crazy, I was like, that's not for me. But I had my snippet, right? Like I've honed that power in my own way now. And so I played it over and over and over again. And everywhere I went, I would play it, I would play it, I would play it. And I find that a lot like a metaphor for what we do in life. Up until this point, you've been in a society that has deprived you of the sheet music, right? A society that hasn't taught you, right, like what the notes are. Like we don't learn multiple languages here the way people learn English in other countries, right? Like we don't have this global mindset. It's America Central, like this small corner of the world, and they tell us that it's everything. And so we, especially as Black people, we take the resources and the tools and the gifts that we have, right? And we memorize the keys. We find ways to impact lives, to impact people and transform the world, which we have. And you'll see that when you go, we are everywhere. Our culture is everywhere. And we've done that with just the resources that we have. But now it's time to learn the music, right? Because personal growth is this infinite thing. It's not a goalpost, it's not a landmark, right? Like you should constantly be seeking to expand your impact. And so if your goal is to impact something, someone, somewhere, why would you limit yourself? If I told you you could reach 1,000 people and you only knew how to reach 100 and you just stopped there, wouldn't that make you a fool? If I told you could reach 101 people and you had only reached 100 and you stopped there, wouldn't that make you a fool? Because each one matters. And so this is where we get into the part that matters most, right? If we're talking about globalization, what matters most is what do you live for? Because I can't take you anywhere further than that, and nobody can take you anywhere further than that, and nobody can answer that question. So I'm going to give you 15 seconds to write down where you are, what you live for, what matters to you. So I don't know what you wrote, as much as I wish that I did. But I guarantee you whatever you wrote is transferable to the world. If you're passionate about police abolition and Black Lives Mattering across the world, I guarantee you there are Black people in the favelas of Brazil right now being beaten and brutalized and murdered by police at higher rates than we ever were here. And they need you and what you have to contribute to that cause. If you're here for queer liberation, if you live for equality, gender equality, if you live for healthcare reform, if you live for water access and for climate change and environmentalism, there's a place for you in the world. Those things aren't just issues here, so why limit yourself here? I want you to transcend beyond living just for yourself and your existence and those that you know and those that you most relate to, and transcend to living for humanity. Your cause in humanity. And I want you to see yourself in the big picture. That's what traveling's about. That's what seeing the world is about. It's about learning the music so that your impact can be felt everywhere you go. So that you can decondition your mind and strip your mind of these Western ideals and conditions about what's right and what's wrong and what's possible. And then you become limitless. That part isn't something that I can do for you. I can't make you want to impact more than where you are. That is something, that is a motivation that has to be within you. And so you have to ask yourself, is what you live for conditional or is it unconditional? Do you really live for what you live for? Are you really about that action? Because if you're not, there's no shame. I'm not shaming you and I'm not judging you. I love you and I embrace you, but you have to know that about yourself. I had to confront that about myself. Did I care about what I cared about when it wasn't just the people that I knew best or that I related to more? Did I care about it for anybody who was afflicted by it? And so now we get into this place where we're asking, okay, I want this. I want to see myself in the big picture. I want to do this, but it's like, how, right? There's a reason why these systems are built so that it's really hard for us to see our power and our potential as it relates to the big picture. Social media has presented a problem. When I talked to my grandma about the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, she's literally said, I never saw the world unify around it like this. Right? So even the advent of being able to mentally, if not physically, get out of where we are has transformed how we protest and what we utilize and how we feel our power, right? And where we feel the revolution and what we feel like we can change and what we see needs changing. So getting there, as important as it is something that has been limited to us. My experiences, I was fortunate enough and privileged enough to be able to go places for free, right? And you can too. People will pay you at this point for what you have to offer because there's quite literally only one of you. There is only one person with all of the experiences, all of the cells, quite literally chemical balances that you have. Nobody in this world is exactly like you. Hone that, harness that, and sell that to get yourself where you need to go to expand your impact. My first abroad experience was Senegal. And it was transformative for me because it was the first time that I was in this place for a month with the HU Gear Up program here doing research, and I didn't speak the language, right? But I spoke love, I spoke humanity, I spoke care. And so I would exchange with people with what little French and what little Wolof I had, and I would go over families' houses and we celebrated the end to Ramadan together with people that I literally had just met but were embraced by. And I started to decondition and strip away these ideas of community and what it means to embrace and what it means to learn other people's cultures without appropriating, right? Without necessarily being from them, but embracing and being receptive to them. Yali gave me my second opportunity to leave this nation. Mind you, this is by this time my second time going to Africa. Nobody in my family had ever been back to our homeland, so this was transformative generationally. And that's another benefit of travel. And here I am with Yali, and I'm turning 21, and I'm with my best friends, right? Full of Black excellence, love, and support. And we're seeing this world for the first time. And we're seeing a lot of similarities between South Africa and here. And we're seeing that even in our own land, somehow they managed to set up this system with our people still here. But then we also got to see the beauty, how our people have used the resources to memorize the keys and still impact each other and impact widely. And by that point, I had stripped away a lot of the things that made me unreceptive before in my travels in ways that I wasn't even conscious about. And I was in this new place, able to receive and be open to it. Yali is one of the only organizations that does what it does. And I think people take that for granted. Like when I talk about Yali and other places, like people are like, that's really cool. Like focusing on the diaspora, focusing on our people, focusing on reuniting you with the place that will make you feel the most grounded that you've ever felt. And that's the privilege of being in this space. So I'm glad that you're here and that you're taking advantage of it and that you even want to. And so now we get into like the money part, right? I promise you the money is there. My Gear Up trip, it was free, but it was a research project. And that's how it was twisted to allow students to go for free. For Yali, I used honors program funding. And now I'm here, standing right here in London, completely at no cost to me. And this is where I begin to close, because this is one of the most important parts. Okay, like how do you get these connections? People. The prize of this life isn't gold and jewels and money and possessions and jobs and positions and power. It's people. People will get you everywhere you need to go. People will change your life. It was mentors and sisters and guidance counselors and people who pushed me to Howard. It was those same kind of people as professors and administrators who pushed me towards Gear Up in Senegal. It was those same kind of people like Dr. A who pushed me into South Africa and allowed me to have that opportunity and cared enough about me to have that opportunity. And it was people like Dr. Miller in the honors office who pushed me so hard to cast my net wide when it came to my fellowships, knowing that I was the only one with my experience, with my knowledge, right? I was the only me, and that I needed to sell that everywhere and let the fish come where they may, right? And so when I was sitting there trying to place all my eggs in the Fulbright basket, right? For me, it's God. For you, it may be the universe. It may be Allah. Whatever you believe or don't believe or are waiting to believe in is orchestrating this thing. Like life is intentional. And so as Fulbright rejected me, I'm sitting here in London, right? One of literally the most multicultural cities that I have ever been to. I mean, I've quite literally met a new person from a new country every time I've left here. And that's an experience that is unique to where I am. And to think that I was going to limit myself. But if it were not for people who helped me take the limits off of myself and help remove those limits off me, I wouldn't be here. So if you want to know how, use your network, use your resources, use the privilege that you have being here. And that's how you begin to navigate this. There is no one answer. There's no one all be all. You have to fight and seek, but actively seek. And if I could give you number 2, be receptive. Everywhere you go, you have to be receptive. If you want to be a leader, you have to be receptive. If you want to make change, you have to be receptive. You don't know it all. I don't know it all. There's so much that I have left to learn. And there's so much that you have left to learn about people and cultures, about the world, about where you are, about where you're going, but you have to be receptive to that. And that's all leadership is. It's being receptive to those around you, receptive to the vision, right? Being receptive and leading people through what you receive. And so global leadership isn't some different kind of leadership. It's the same thing. It's just transcended into a bigger level. It's the next step up. You can't have leadership without global leadership being right there. You have leadership here and you have leadership wide, and you have to be receptive for them all. And if you want to transcend and reach new heights and go along this personal journey of growth, you have to be receptive to everything that you can. And the third thing is embrace and use your privilege. Privilege isn't this dirty word. Privilege is only this toxic thing if you refuse to acknowledge it, if you use it to beat other people, if you use it to oppress others or to gatekeep where you are. But think of how much more powerful you could be if you could use that privilege to give more to others, to lift other people up, to get where you need to be, to expand your impact. At some point, you have to confront that you are blessed to be where you are and stop withering it away. Yes, the struggle is real, but now you're here. So what are you going to do with it? I'm going to pick up every note that I can, every place that I go to learn the music. And I can't wait to hear the songs that you create.